I have been given a directive by one of my professors at KU, Dr. Estelle Gavosto, said, at any opportunity that you get, I want you to encourage women to enter the STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so um, I grew up with a buddy of mine named Jeff, and his mom. I didn't realize that his mom was an aerospace engineer. So I started asking some questions, and lo and behold, um, she turns out to have an incredible career and an invaluable resource. So if I'm sending my students to this particular conversation, it's because I want to hopefully inspire somebody to get into the STEM fields, whether or not you think you're allowed to be in STEM. I think what we're about to discuss is hopefully going to break down a lot of those stereotypes. So yeah, joining me is Michele Brekke. As soon as the Zoom gets all sorted out and all that, there you are. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
Good.
Let
So
me let me just see what buttons I can. Oh wow, I made you real big.
you're welcome. I don't need any help in that department. I'm already a giant.
Okay, you look like you're right next door.
Yeah, well, you sound like you're right next door.
Cool.
Before we go any further, you are currently living in Dallas, and I have to ask this question because it is the single most burning question anybody has. What is your HEB situation? How close are you to an
Oh,
HEB? Do you
oh,
have one?
oh, we
What are we
have
looking at?
one. The first one opened up last September.
Ooh,
Pretty much, I bought my house in early September and it opened up in mid-September. It's
oh,
about 15 minutes from my house.
yeah,
And anyone I talk to about having an HEB that close, they're jealous of me.
yes, as they should be, because it's the world's greatest grocery store.
Yeah. So, I didn't appreciate because I had one probably 5 minutes from my house down where I used to live in League City.
Yeah.
And I just didn't appreciate.
Well, and the one we had in Friendswood growing up, you just didn't know. You had no idea what
I
kind of a
never shopped
gym.
there. I
Yeah,
shopped at Kroger.
right. Same with our family. All right. So for anybody listening, they probably thinking this is the weirdest thing ever, but um you have to get the important stuff out of the way first.
Oh, absolutely. Now
You know,
there's 3 HEBs up here.
oh well, that's very good. Oh,
Yeah,
now you're
it
now
just
you're
opened the third one, I think last weekend.
oh man. So you just have a wealth there. You could share with
Yeah.
some of us up here in the north, all the way
But
up here in
okay,
Kansas
I
City.
just have to say this real quick.
Yeah.
When they opened last September, I didn't go for a while because I was actually out of town.
Yeah.
I came back, so they'd been open maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I drive there, I just at some regular time during the day, and there were no parking spots.
Right. And the line to get into an HEB.
So I waited until Sunday morning at 7 a.m.
That's perfect.
and I was able to find a parking spot out in the back 40,
Good
7 a.m. on a Sunday.
gracious.
The only question I had was, where did all these people shop before HEB?
I mean that place it is unbelievable what they're able to do.
Okay.
And the thing I love the most about HEB is they have HEB brand brisket sausage. It's
Oh.
sausage made of brisket, and oh my gosh. Yeah,
Ooh, okay.
when we had our men's retreat before the wedding, I made sure they brought some up. So I made kolaches with that brisket sausage, and they were Unbelievable. I thought
I
that was
love
the
it.
best batches. Yeah.
Men's retreat.
Yeah,
I've
that's what
never
I
heard
had
it
to call
called
it.
that.
Yeah.
I've heard it called a bachelor party.
Well, there was nothing that resembled a bachelor party about that at all. At
It
all.
was
It
more
was,
like a retreat.
yeah, it was a men's retreat. That's the best way you could describe it. It was probably so, that was a memorable 48 hours. I mean, just being with the
Good,
guys and
good.
it was the best.
Oh,
And to
good.
do it before the wedding.
Yeah.
This last calendar year has been really good for I say the six of us. There's six guys that kind of
Yep.
we have a group chat. We're constantly talking back and forth, and
Good. That's healthy.
yeah,
That's
it really is.
very healthy.
It really is. Yeah. So we have I've done a terrible job of introducing who in the world you are. So, and when I was in sixth grade, um, your son Jeff, we were in the same grade, he won this thing for selling the most popcorn or whatever it was,
Right.
most
Right.
industrious kid in the world. And he got a he won a limo ride,
Right.
and he got to invite six of us to go on a limo ride or something along those lines.
Yep.
And we
I
went on.
remember it well.
Yeah, it was the coolest thing, and I did not feel deserving in the moment. And I've never really felt super deserving of all of the things that Jeff has done for me as a friend, all of the support he's shown me as a friend, and all I can do is just cheer him on at every stage.
Yeah.
He just real quick about Jeff, because I know you already know this, but he is a board certified anesthesiologist, and he just made partner within the last year or year and a half at a very I don't know, just an amazing firm in what he's doing in
Yeah.
the Dallas area.
Uh-huh.
Like I couldn't be more proud of him. Right.
Yeah.
I have since sixth grade considered myself a cheerleader for him, because
Wow.
I couldn't do it myself. The things that he has done. I think there was a stretch there where he was in his early 20s. He had graduated from Texas. He was taking post grads a
Right.
full like 19 hours or 21 hours,
Yeah.
carrying a 4.0, pre-med 4.0.
Right.
He was working three jobs as like a EMT. He was calibrating equipment at the hospital, and like Uber driving on the at night.
Uber driving,
and
cab.
and
He pedaled a cab at the
he was
games
he
at
was
the football
yeah.
stadium.
And for the rodeo, he was like a human rickshaw guy for the rodeo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he said he
absolutely.
lost 15 pounds when he was doing the pedal cab
And he
thing.
did not have it to lose either. And he's always been a phenomenal soccer player, high energy. Just his work ethic is something to be
Yeah.
admired. But he did that for 4 years while trying to get into med school. And every year he would keep getting denied. And he had recommendations from like Dr. Red Duke. I mean,
Yep.
and anybody who knows who Dr. Red Duke is, I mean, he started Life Flight in the
Right.
United States. I mean, he's
Right.
one of the he's an incredible guy, and he was on the local Houston news and all
Yeah,
that.
I remember.
So for having him to have a recommendation for Jeff and for him to still not get in, all it was a filing issue. Right. It took him 4 years to learn that he needed to file at the beginning of the window and not at the end. And
Well, yeah,
so know.
it might not have been quite that simple, but he was coached
Yeah.
over those 3 years on what he needed to do to improve his getting into medical school, and he did those.
Yeah.
So, he he took direction well.
Yeah.
And he implemented that. And then you're right. After that third year, I still remember getting that call.
Yeah.
I was out with some friends, and I saw my phone ringing, and it was him. And I knew that this was around the time when he might be hearing. And he said, "I'm in."
Ugh.
And that's it kind of warms my heart,
Yeah.
Dave, to hear you speak of him that way, because that story, if you ask me, is something that young high schoolers, grade schoolers can hear and really appreciate. That, you don't always get what you want right away.
Right.
And if you don't, then it's up to you to decide, all right, do I still want to try to get it? Or do I want to give up and do something else? And everybody's different.
Right.
But when you don't get it right away, that's when you learn how bad you want it.
And what kind of character do you think it shows? Every time he got denied, what kind of character did it show for him to get knocked down and to watch him pick himself up? And in the midst of probably the hardest time in what I would say is his hardest time, in the midst of that, he still was able to be coachable. He was
Yeah.
still trying to learn and grow. So what kind of
Right.
character do you think that showed?
Well, just ultimate determination,
That's right.
ultimate
Persistence.
persistence,
Yeah.
realizing if you want something bad enough and you face a brick wall,
Right.
you will get over or around or through that brick wall if you don't give up.
Right.
And that's how you know what you really want.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's uh yeah.
I mean,
So
we could spend, the full time here that you're going to give me talking about him because, obviously he's one of my closest friends, if not me, my closest friend, and he's
yeah.
a tremendous person, and I know he's going to hate the first 12 minutes of this. But you are like your
I'm his
story.
mom.
I know you're just mom.
I'm just his
You
mom.
just mom. Yeah,
I'm
right.
his cheerleader.
But what I had never had an opportunity to really learn what it is that you did. And when I finally figured it out, I was gobsmacked. In all honesty, I didn't
I
realize
love it.
well, you're Jeff's mom. That's right. Like, so you're Jeff's mom. But I didn't realize what kind of a career you had and what kind of things you were able to accomplish and what kind of you always hear like I wonder if I was a fly on the wall in the room whenever such and such happened. Well, you were in the room for some pretty incredible things that were happening. So let's explore your career and what you've done, and before we get to that part, I want to talk about you as a young person growing up, and what inspired you to get into science specifically.
Yeah.
What at what age do you think you were like, I want to get into science, or you got the
Yeah.
curiosity
Oh,
bug?
I know the exact moment
Yeah, what
that
happened?
I decided. I was 16 years old.
Uh-huh.
It was July 20th,
Oh, wow.
1969,
Okay, so why is that date important?
because that's the day that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon for
Oh,
the
yeah.
first time. We just had the anniversary, the 54th anniversary. Just
Wow.
that's why I was in Houston last week. We had
Yeah.
an anniversary celebration. So, but wait a minute, why would a 16-year-old girl
And where did you grow up?
from Rochester, New York,
Uh-huh.
upstate New York, why would she decide to be an astronaut right then and there? Well, it's because of something that happened 6 weeks earlier. And
Okay.
this is the sad part of my story, but it's also has a good ending.
Okay.
So I had an older brother. He was 2 years older than me. And all throughout my young life, I did everything I could to keep up with him
Sure.
and do what he could do. So, okay, I'm competitive. He's
Yeah.
2 years older. If doesn't matter if he does it, I can do it. I didn't have to do it better. I just wanted to do it. So if he played sandlot baseball. I played sandlot baseball, and I was determined that I was going to be good enough that they didn't just let me play. They wanted me to play.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I was gifted with some athletic ability, and I played sandlot ball with the guys. I had more guy friends than girlfriends, and I liked hanging out with the guys because they did cool stuff. They played sandlot baseball. We played board games. I don't know, when you were growing up, did you play board games like the game of Risk?
Yeah.
Uh, and anyway, so, and the
Yeah.
girls that I hung out with, I just don't remember them being so much fun. So I was used to hanging out with the guys. I had this brother that I was determined to do everything he could do. And we also watched Star Trek. So Star Trek came out in early to mid 60s. So I was a young teenager, and he and I would race home and wrestle over who got to sit in the lazy boy recliner,
Yeah.
most comfortable chair in the living room, to watch on our black and white TV Star Trek.
Yeah.
So, all right, then early June 1969, actually June 8th, my brother died.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I did not know that happened.
He was in a boating accident and he drowned.
Oh man.
He was away for the weekend. It was the weekend before his high school graduation. So
Mm.
he was with a bunch of buddies and friends and everything. And long story short, he died.
Yeah.
And well, I'm 16 years old. I said, well, total shock. The world stopped spinning
Right.
when we got that phone call. The world stopped spinning. I mean, it was the most profound moment in my life.
Right.
And I wanted to deny it. No, he just swam to some shore somewhere, and they just haven't found him yet. And I just wanted to deny it, but he died. And after a few days, the world started slowly spinning again.
Right.
And when it did, and I could think about something other than that horrible thing, I thought, whoa, he's gone. He was 18.
Yeah.
I'm 16 and I'm still here. And I was, it was the summer between my junior and senior year in high school. Oh my gosh, I got my whole life ahead of me. I'm here for a purpose. I am alive for some purpose, and I need to have a purposeful life.
Yeah.
So I just felt this compelling need to find something to do when I grew up that would be a contribution, that would represent my purpose and what have you.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks later,
In that feeling of needing to find something, you
yeah,
see Neil Armstrong and
and I mean, it was just boom.
wow.
That's what I'm gonna do. First of all, it looked like fun. And
Sure.
that's the first thing I tell kids when they say, well, how do I know what I should do when I grow up? I said, first of all, do something that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Because if it is fun, you'll be good at it.
Sure.
If you're good at it, you'll enjoy it and it
Right.
won't feel like work.
Right.
Anyway, so it looked like fun when you watch those guys bouncing around on the moon and they're joking. Oh my gosh. Now, okay, it looks like fun. Now, I wasn't dumb. I mean, I thought, wow, it's going to take me a long time to learn everything that astronauts have to learn in order to go into space. But shoot, if I want it bad enough, I can do it. So
Yeah.
that's when I decided. All right. So the next step is well, what do you major in college to be an astronaut?
Yeah.
Well, it's 1969. And when I started school up in the fall, and I went to a Catholic high school, and I talked to the nuns and said, I want to be an astronaut. What do I major in college? And they said, a what? So I told my dad, they don't know. And he said, well, write to your congressman. That's why we elect them. So I wrote to my congressman
Okay.
and said, I want to be an astronaut. What should I study in college? And I got a letter back. And this was back in, again, 1969. And this guy clearly was not with it.
Right.
In his letter, he said, well, that's very noble of you, a girl, to want to be an astronaut. But at this time, that's not possible for the following reasons. Number one, the hygiene equipment on the spacecraft is designed for a man.
So
That I said to myself, wait a minute, I'm a Girl Scout. I pee in the woods. In the woods too. I thought, oh my God, if I can pee in the woods, surely NASA can figure out how a lady can pee in a spacecraft.
Right.
So I kind of poo-pooed that. And I
Right.
even thought, shoot, I could design a little funnel thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, that didn't even trigger the radar screen to light up. Okay, the second one is NASA requires astronauts to have thousands of hours of jet pilot time.
Right.
And the military does not allow women to fly jets. Again, this is 1969.
Yeah.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Doesn't that guy, this congressman, doesn't he watch Star Trek? Because there are women on the Enterprise. And none of them are pilots.
Right.
Have other jobs on the spacecraft. And what I liked about them is they got to push buttons. So they'd set, Uhura, she sat at the console and got to push buttons and make things happen.
Right.
And then, of course, there was a nurse, but I wasn't interested in medical. But the point was, come on, buddy, you got to watch TV because they have women in spacecraft. And, when you're 16 years old, the line between reality and Hollywood is kind of gray.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, but I probably didn't really appreciate that we didn't have spacecraft flying around in space back then. We had Apollo.
Right.
That's all we had. And it's not like it flew all around in space. It went from Earth to the moon and back.
Right.
Of course, I understand all that now, but when you're 16, it was all pretty gray. And I just remember thinking, NASA, they have landed men on the moon. Surely by the time I grow up, they're going to have a spacecraft with jobs for women.
Right.
So that I won't have to be a pilot, because I didn't want to fly. I never really wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to operate the systems on the spacecraft.
Right.
Okay. So, and then the third thing was, and NASA requires astronauts to have an advanced degree in science or engineering. To which I said, I could do that.
Right.
I know colleges let women in.
Yeah.
So I selected aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
And I selected University of Minnesota because I knew a husband and wife that had just moved there from Rochester. He was the coach of a volleyball team I was on. I played volleyball.
Yeah.
And she was on the team, and they relocated to St. Paul. So they had been trying to get me to come out and play volleyball for them. And, I said, I need to go to college. I need to take aerospace engineering. And they wrote back and they said, well, there's a school down the street, University of Minnesota. Maybe they have that. So
And it
I,
turns out there was only a handful of schools that had an aerospace engineering program at that time, right?
I don't know. I do
Okay.
know that there was, I think I applied to 3 schools. I applied to the University of Colorado. That
Okay.
was my number 1 choice,
Yeah.
but I wasn't accepted there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, they
Um,
missed out.
yeah. Then I applied to the Minnesota, and then there was another school. It wasn't a university. It was more of a very focused school just on aerospace.
Hmm.
And I don't, maybe I didn't actually apply to that one. But when I got accepted at Minnesota and I went out and visited the campus and fell in love with it, I just thought, I'm going here.
Yeah.
It talked to me.
Yeah. All
So
right.
that's where I went.
So you go to the University of Minnesota. You absolutely do you do what you have to do what you need to do. I don't know if you were like top of your class or whatever it might have been, but you get a degree in aerospace engineering. Talk to me about after you get your degree. Of course you're going to apply to NASA because you're going to go be an astronaut. That's your mentality. You're going to go be an astronaut. What was the hiring process in that time? Because you were talking about early to mid 70s. Had they accepted women as astronauts then at that point? Was there a directive to broaden the scope of who goes to space at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So here's the timeline. I started Minnesota in 71. I got my bachelor's in 75.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, I want to get an advanced degree.
Oh, that's right.
So I stayed on to get a master's, and I took 2 years to get the master's because I wanted to work part-time. I worked for Honeywell in Minneapolis and just get a little experience while getting the advanced degree. So I got the Master's of Science in Aerospace Engineering in 77.
Okay.
Okay. In 76, NASA had the directive that they will start accepting applications from women to become astronauts in
Right.
the next selection.
So
And
you wrote the same senator back and said, "Nana, nana, boo, boo." No, just kidding.
yeah, I don't even remember who that was. I remember it was a man. Of course, I don't
Right.
know that we had any lady politicians back then, but there just so much has happened in 50 or 60 years. I mean, it's a whole different planet now, just
Yeah.
in that few number of years. So anyway, I was in contact with NASA. I had written letters to NASA, different levels of NASA, letting them know, hey, I'm here, I'm
Yeah.
ready whenever you're ready for me. So NASA actually informed me
Oh,
that they have this directive that they will begin accepting applications for women, and the timing was perfect
right.
because I forget when the applications were due, but they were due in the time frame when I was going to be wanting a job. So I applied, and I'll kind of go a little quicker here.
Yeah.
I got a call, I don't know, maybe a few weeks later after I submitted the application, and people ask me, well, how do you apply for a job for NASA? And I say, you submit an application.
Right. Just like you would anywhere else.
Yeah, you go online, you
Right.
know, nasa.gov. I mean, you go online now. Back
Right now, but not.
when I had to write. I had to write for things.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you just submit an application. Okay, so I got a phone call from a guy at Johnson Space Center, and he was offering me a job as an instructor to the astronauts.
Oh, wow.
not an astronaut, but an
Right.
instructor to the astronauts. And he was very nice, and he just called me based on my application, and I said, well, if I accept this job, will that
Close
affect
the
me
door.
becoming an astronaut? He said, no, as a matter of fact, we think we, the collective we, that will help, because if you come down here and get your feet on the ground, get some work experience here, then you'll become a known commodity. I don't know if he said it that way, but that's the point.
Right.
And that is true. So I thought, whoa, I want the job. Yeah, well, I said, well, wait a minute. I'm gonna instruct them. Who's gonna instruct me? So anyway, took the
That's
job
amazing.
and moved to Houston in the summer of '77. So the ink was still wet on my master's degree
Yeah.
diploma, and moved to Houston in '77 and bought a house in Friendswood,
Hmm.
because we had heard that Friendswood had the best school district in the area.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we sure did.
Wanted to, I mean, we weren't even, I was married, and we weren't even thinking of kids at that time,
Right.
but it just sounded good to be in a place with a really good school district.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we bought a house, and he also got a job with NASA. So when that guy had called me and offering me the job as an instructor to the astronauts, and we talked, and I said, well, I have this husband, you see, and he's going to need a job. And the
Right.
guy says, well, what does he do? I said, he's getting a bachelor's in electrical engineering.
There you
And
go.
the guy says, oh, I got a buddy down the hall that needs electrical engineer. Let me see, have him send his application in and all that. So he did, and he got hired.
Yeah.
So we moved down there, and and then he ended up leaving NASA after about 5 or 6 years, and he went with a contractor. But anyway, I became an instructor, and yeah,
So
I
were you in charge of like buckling them into the gyro thing where they had to go spinning
no,
around and all that?
no, and as a matter of fact, they didn't do that anymore. They did
Oh,
that in the old days.
oh man. So
No, that and
you were the part of the new wave, huh?
yeah, the new wave. Yep. That's called a centrifuge. And
Right.
they did that in the '60s with the original astronauts. And it was a way to see how if they could function with high G's
Yeah.
pushing on the body. Um, and I don't even know what they learned, but the reason they stopped doing it is because the space shuttle. So when I started at NASA, Apollo was done.
Right.
No more Apollo.
Right.
The Skylab program was just finishing up,
Okay.
and the new program was the space shuttle.
Yeah.
So I was hired along with other whippersnappers to be the instructors of this new program, the space shuttle, to teach the astronauts how to operate the space shuttle.
So you had to
And
learn all the thousands of little buttons and switches and all of those little things. My goodness.
yeah, I
So
did.
if you
Oh,
like, so if you're a common citizen like myself, and you go to Johnson Space Center, they have a mock-up of the Endeavour, I think it is. But you have a mock-up of one of the space shuttles right there in the middle of
right.
the touristy thing that you can do. And when
Yep.
you walk into the shuttle itself, there are no less than 5.5 million buttons and switches. And I'm pretty sure there's like 20% of them do nothing. I think they're just there to confuse people and make it seem like it's more difficult than what it is. But so you had to learn all of the different systems of the shuttle. You had to learn how they all interacted with each other, just so that you could turn around and teach
Yeah.
somebody else to go do it. So so there's some pretty big names of some astronauts that came through the shuttle program.
Yeah. Well, one of the
Obviously,
big ones is John Young. John Young walked on the moon.
yeah.
And then a few years later, Brekke comes down there and stands up in front of a classroom and teaches John Young what a certain switch means.
Right.
It was the most, it was the strangest feeling.
Had to be
I
surreal.
I felt so small
Yeah.
because, okay, so when I got down there, I mean, they don't tell you just learn everything all at once. It was a very organized approach. So I was given a small subset of the systems.
Sure.
I had to learn the ascent, guidance, navigation, and flight control.
Oh, was there an acronym for that?
Yeah, ascent, G, N, and C.
Of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
G, N, and C. So I focused on that. And because I knew I was going to be training my heroes,
Yeah.
I wanted to learn it so well that I wouldn't have to say, I don't know when they
Yeah.
asked me a question.
Good.
Now, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. And I did have to say that periodically. And then you say, but I will get the answer and get back with you. But
Right.
my goal was to not have to say it.
Yeah.
So I learned it as best I could. And I had fun with it because it was fun to learn about a real spacecraft,
Yeah.
to apply the knowledge that I'd gone to school for.
Oh, wow.
And we did stand-up classrooms, and we didn't have computers back then, so we used view graph machines.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
You
And those
got
projector with the
the
little
projector
slides.
and the
Oh, yeah.
overhead, and so
Yeah.
we made our own slides.
Did you have the largest collection of Visa V markers?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the kind that you can erase, vis-a-vis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. And
absolutely.
then I like to animate, during my discussion. So I'd put a slide up, and then I'd say, and when you push this button, and I'd take my marker and
Yeah.
push this one. So I had John Young, I had Fred Hayes. Fred Hayes was on Apollo 13.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So he survived along with the whole crew. That
Right.
Apollo 13, and then he stayed in the program. Some of them didn't. I think he might have been the only Apollo 13 crew member that stayed. The others left, and a lot of the Apollo guys ended up retiring. But Fred and John Young, and then there was another program that NASA had that really didn't get much attention. That several of the younger, by younger, I'm talking about in their 30s and maybe young 40s, they were in. So they all moved into the shuttle program. And then NASA started hiring the new classes
Yeah.
of astronauts that did include women.
Yeah. And
And
who
so
do you
I
remember
got,
the first group of women that came through your classes?
oh, very well. Yeah, yeah. So the let me just paint the picture. So
Please.
I get down there, and the first that I did get a skinny little letter soon after I got down to Houston and it was working. I got the skinny little letter in the mail saying I didn't get selected as an astronaut, but
Ah,
was encouraged to apply again.
right.
Um, and then about a year later, I think it was 78, that first group of I'll call them the young astronauts, they were selected and they reported to Johnson Space Center. There were 35 of them, and they became known as the 35 new guys.
Oh, yeah.
And in that group, there were 6 women.
Wow.
One of them, Sally Ride,
Yeah.
and then Kathy Sullivan. Kathy Sullivan's the first American to walk in space.
Wow.
And then there's others, but I got to know all of them, not as an instructor. Huh?
Well, Well, so what were you doing when that new class of people came through?
Well, I was an instructor, but they were so new that we weren't teaching them yet.
Okay.
They actually didn't they had other basic training. They went through 2 years of basic training, like survival training out in the desert
Okay, I
Southwest.
remember watching documentaries about that.
Yeah, and then all the do's and don'ts, and they had to learn politics and stuff. So actually, I ended up leaving the instructor position after 5 years, and it was right about then that I left. That they were then coming into the classroom,
Ah,
so
okay.
I didn't really come across them in that role. But we had a volleyball team. We had a ladies volleyball team, and
Yeah.
Sally, Sally played. She was a semi-pro tennis player.
Oh, wow.
So she was very athletic. And
Yeah.
then Kathy Sullivan, and there were a couple of others. So we had a volleyball team, and so I got to know them that way. But then I moved into another position, and I'll tell you about that. And then that's when I started interfacing at work with Sally Ride and Kathy Sullivan, and then there was some other women that came
So
along.
as an engineer, the I guess like the simple way of putting it is engineers solve problems, right? So like scientists ask questions and look at questions.
And
Um,
study.
yeah,
Scientists study problems.
right. But
Engineers
engineers
solve them.
solve them. Right, exactly. And mathematicians in general, mathematicians are doing more theoretical, like half theoretical, half applied. And I know for sure you ran into some incredible mathematicians in your time at NASA. And I want to ask you about that before you leave. But as an engineer, what kind of problems were you solving when you were working with
Yep.
the astronauts?
Okay. Excellent question. And
Thank you.
I wish kids would ask me that, or even adults, because somebody will ask you, well, what do you do? I say, well, I'm an aerospace engineer.
Right.
I get the whoa.
Yeah. And
Well, like,
everything else is over your
yeah.
head.
I
Yeah.
mean, don't you want to know what I did?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think they're just too afraid
Or maybe
that.
they just don't understand what an engineer does.
Yeah, but they don't even ask me that. But anyway, when you
Yeah.
said, I thought it was great. I've told a lot of my friends this. I said he wants to hear some of the actual problems
Yeah.
that I had to work on. Just not generalization, but real problems.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great when you said, did you have to find those problems on your own, or did your boss tell you to go find them, or what? Anyway,
Right.
so I actually gave it some thought.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that I had to solve was this was a space shuttle mission. So now I moved into a position in mission control,
Right.
and I was a payloads officer. Payloads being the satellites that we flew on the shuttle and took into space. Most of the ones I was assigned to were deployables. So they were big satellites that rode up in the cargo bay, and then the crew would grapple them with the robotic arm and then place them in orbit, and then they would fly their mission.
Right.
So I was in mission control, and I was the payload officer, or think of it as the team lead in mission control for the deployment of this specific satellite.
Okay.
Okay. And we worked in teams. Almost everything we did was as a team. You have what we call think tanks, and people go off and they're on their own and they're doing all this math and equations and everything, and that's fine. But at NASA, we don't have that. It's all
Right.
a team. Now, each team member has a specific assignment. It's like a sports team. You're
Sure.
on the same team, but you play different positions.
Right.
So my position was the leader of this team of experts that knew everything about this particular satellite.
Okay.
So we launch, and it comes time to deploy the satellite. And it turns out Sally Ride was the robot arm operator on the mission.
Yeah.
So I got to practice with her as a part of the preparation in the months leading to the mission, because we had to communicate things that were going on. So we had to understand what each other was doing and when they did it. So we trained together. And anyway, so we launch and we get up there, and it comes time to deploy this satellite. So Sally grapples the satellite with the robotic arm and pull. I'm gonna let you be able to see my arm.
Yeah.
And she holds the satellite up above the cargo bay while some commands were sent by the payload team that ended up being at another center. So they're sending commands to get it all configured. The last thing that has to happen is for the solar arrays to be unfurled,
Okay.
because that's how it's going to make energy.
Right.
Solar power, and you get the solar energy, you charge the batteries, and life is good. You do your experiments, and ta-da.
Right.
So that's the last thing that had to happen, is those solar panels had to be unfurled, because if they're all tucked up on the satellite, they're not going to
You
make
can't get
energy.
any energy. Yeah.
Right. Well, so it came time to send the command to unfurl those arrays, and that was my job, was to coordinate all this communication between Sally, the crew, and mission control. And then there was this remote payload ops center, actually at Goddard, which is in Maryland.
Okay.
And I'm like the lead traffic cop person, saying, okay, it's your turn to send the command, and okay, now it's your turn. And then we radio up to Sally, okay, all the commands have been sent. It's time for you to push the button and unfurl those solar panels. Okay, get right on it. And my heart's going clunk, clunk, clunk.
This better work.
About a minute or two later, Houston, no joy.
Oh, yeah.
The solar panels. The term "no joy" means
It's not working.
It's not working. So when you hear "no joy," I'm even getting the chills now.
Oh, no.
It's not working. So all heads turn and look at me.
You're a little hot under the collar, huh? You're like, please.
All right. So, I went through a lot of training, and, if you ever play a sport,
Yeah.
it's that you get that adrenaline, and you get out on the field or out on the court, and sometimes the play doesn't go your way, but you don't just turn and tuck your tail between your legs.
Right.
You dig deeper.
Yeah.
You think, okay, I can do this. I can figure this out. I got a whole team of people. So we have a voice loop that we talk on. So I key my mic and I said, okay, team, the arrays are stuck.
Right.
Now, one thing that we always did and still do is long before the launch, you brainstorm on what could go wrong.
Right.
What could go wrong? And if, you come up with a whole bunch of ideas, and then you filter out the silly ones, and then you decide, okay, these 10 things really could go wrong. So we're going to write a malfunction procedure.
Yeah.
Those 10 things. So we had brainstormed that the solar panels might get stuck.
Smart.
So I'm on, I get on the loop, I'm on my headset, and I said, okay, team, I know we have a malfunction procedure for stuck solar panels. Should we tell her to run that procedure?
Right.
And they all go, yeah, tell her to run the procedure. All right, so we radio up to Sally to run the procedure for the stuck solar array. Now, what that procedure was, it had her input pulses into the robot arm to kind of shake it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And so that's the, we gave her a procedure number, and she did it.
You know what I'm thinking? You remember so when you were watching Star Trek and it got a little fuzzy and your brother told you to run up to the TV and knock the side of it to try and get the I mean this is a $500 million knock the side of the
Yeah,
just knock it around a little bit.
yeah, bang it around.
Oh my
So,
god.
we're
Did that work? Did the panels come out when she got the Canadian arm to shake there?
no.
Oh no. So are the algorithm that was developed for this moment, the algorithm that developed for this one problem didn't work. Did you have a backup to the backup?
It's called flying by the seat of your pants.
Heck yeah, you did.
Okay, so we ran the malfunction procedure, and that did not clear the problem.
Oh man.
And I'm telling you, I'm on the edge of my seat. My heart's ka-thunk,
Yeah.
because I knew that if we didn't get those solar panels out, there was no mission, and we couldn't put the satellite back in the cargo bay because commands had already been sent to try to release the panels.
Yeah.
And so we there was a safety restriction. Once you send the commands, you can't put it back in because they might come loose during landing
Or re-entry. Yeah.
re-entry. So I knew we got space junk on the end of this robotic arm if we don't get these solar panels out.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so
I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars. I wasn't exaggerating when I said there's like a $500 million satellite sitting on the end of this arm.
yeah,
Like,
that's I don't know how many zeros that is.
right, but it's ridiculous.
That, it was, and to me, it was, the money's one thing, but it's the knowledge
the exploration.
that I am responsible
Yeah.
for solving this problem. Now, obviously, I have a team, but it's my leadership that's needed to solve this problem.
Right.
I can't just give up. So I got on the loops, and I in my leadership voice, I said, okay, gang, rocking and rolling didn't fix it. We called that the rocking and rolling.
Right.
We don't have any other malfunction procedure in our arsenal that addresses this kind of problem. Let's talk about what else we can do. What's going on? What is causing these arrays, these solar panels, to be stuck?
Yeah.
So
and your time's running out because Sally doesn't have all day to
right, and we had a whole boatload of other science experiments that couldn't get started until we got that satellite out of the bay.
Right.
Okay, so this is what, to me, this is a fantastic lesson that you don't have to have all the answers up here.
Right.
You can use, call a friend,
Yeah.
call a friend, get a lifeline, use all the resources available to you.
Yeah.
And put them to work. I said, team, we have got to figure out what's going on here. why are these arrays stuck? And after about 5 seconds, a voice comes on the loop. It's a guy. I know him very well. He was like the chief engineer for that satellite.
Yeah.
And he said, maybe the hinges are frozen because space is very cold.
Right.
I mean, there's no atmosphere, so it's a vacuum. You get the radiant heat from the sun when it's shining on something,
Yeah.
but if you're in the shadow, like if you're in the shadow of the shuttle, it's like minus 200 degrees.
Yeah, I
So,
learned a lot about that when watching the James Webb documentaries and stuff. So did you turn the shuttle?
okay,
What
so
did you do? I want to know.
this guy, he said maybe the hinges are frozen, the hinges of the solar panels. Tell her to point the hinge line to the sun.
Yeah.
And I mean, it snapped with me right away. So that got radioed up to Sally. We think the hinges might be frozen. Point the hinge line, the hinges, to
Yeah.
the sun. And she radioed down. She goes, "What over?" she she didn't quite, get it. So anyway, repeated it,
Yeah.
and she goes, "Oh, okay, copy." And about 2 minutes go by, and we hear solar arrays deployed.
Yay. So we
Yeah,
have now you get yes joy instead of no joy.
yeah. So that's an example of a real problem we had to solve.
Yeah.
And
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
when I tell the story and tell kids, it's not doing the equations on a sheet of paper.
No.
It's using all those tools. Math for us is a tool.
Yeah.
We learn the math, and we have that as a tool to solve the problems. So in this case, temperature, we know temperature was very cold, so we had to warm things up, and the sun is a heat source.
Right.
And so it's just using all of your tools to work through and get a solution.
As you were saying, as you were telling the story and you were talking about the engineer saying, hey, the hinges might be frozen. My mind, I started racing through like, well, how are we going to heat them up? Does she have a blowtorch? I don't know if she has. Does she have a space blowtorch? Does she have batteries, like some sort of way to like jumper cable this thing? Like what kind of heat source?
Yeah.
Is there a hot plate? Do we have a hot plate, some sort of a stove? I don't know. And
So
then
I did,
the
yeah.
sun, the
You know what?
sun, of course, use
So
the
I
sun.
I left that part out, but that's exactly what I said. So when the guy on the loop, he said, maybe the hinges are frozen. And I jumped in and I said, oh, okay, yeah, let's turn the heaters on.
Right.
And he said, there are no heaters. We looked at adding heaters, but decided not to in order to save weight.
Save weight. Yeah, I was going to say save weight.
Because everything has to launch, we have to get past gravity, and every pound is scrubbed to keep the weight as low as possible.
Yeah.
I said, man, no heaters. And then he said, have her point the hinge line to the sun. But I had the same thought. Your mind goes to what you know.
Right.
Well, we know heaters, blow torches, jumper cables. That's what we know.
Exactly.
But to use the sun,
Yeah.
this was this guy's idea. And I told him afterwards, I said, that is just so brilliant to be so resourceful to use the free thing that you got right there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, that's so like I think that's amazing. That's really cool, and I appreciate you sharing that story because it's like it's seemingly relatable, right? Like I didn't have to go to school for 15 years and become an astronaut trainer to solve that problem.
Exactly.
But it's encouraging to know that those are the types of things that
Yeah.
that you go through and solve, and I feel like it makes the daunting word NASA. Like, you only rocket scientists, and only that it takes it and makes it so much more relatable. And I appreciate that story. So thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the way I say it is, I didn't use a single equation to
Right.
solve that problem.
No, you weren't doing the
I didn't
quadratic
even
formula.
use a pencil and paper or a
No.
computer.
Mm-mm.
But the thing is, you need all that education
Right.
to have all the tools.
You have to practice the logic, and you have to
Yeah,
be comfortable learning things that are foreign to you.
right.
And you have to be comfortable learning, I'm going to say a language, because I'm sure the language at NASA is undoubtedly unique to the people at NASA, right? I jokingly said, do you have an acronym for that?
Yeah,
Because in education, there's
yeah.
an acronym for everything. And
As with NASA. Yep.
I could
There
only
is
imagine.
a language. I mean, I could have a whole sentence of acronyms and I'd say it to you and you'd say, but
Right.
if I said it to a colleague, they say, oh yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. But the
We'll
way
get
I
to it
look at it
afterwards.
is everything you learn in school, first of all, you're learning how to learn.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't really learn how to learn until I got to college.
Right. Right.
Then I had to learn how to learn because college courses in engineering are very hard.
Yeah. It's almost getting thrown to the wolves.
Calculus, 2 years of calculus,
Yeah.
2 years of physics, but then you get into all the applied, and that's when it's like, oh, wow, we're solving real world problems.
Right.
And so that's, at NASA, I got to solve real world problems, but I had all those tools and I had a great team.
Right.
I was
Absolutely.
never just on my own in the middle of nowhere. And so,
Now, you've had an incredible career at NASA, and you've worked with Boeing after the shuttle program and everything. But there was one part of your career at NASA that I have a bone to pick with you. You were the director of the NBL. Oh, acronym, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which,
actually, I wasn't the director of it.
okay, so what
I
was your role there?
was the COTAR.
What's a COTAR? Is that
Oh,
like a czar?
another acronym.
Oh.
The COTARs are okay. COTR, Contracting Officers Technical Representative. So
So like, if Boeing wanted to test whether this gadget would fit on some part of the ISS, you were the go-between from Boeing to the NBL.
if it were a contract issue,
Oh,
so
okay.
you have a contract. So I think it was Raytheon.
Sure.
Raytheon operated the NBL.
Okay.
So Raytheon had a contract with NASA. And in that contract, it described all the stuff that Raytheon was responsible for.
Yeah. So you had to
So if Boeing came in and said, well, we want to do this or that, I had to review the contract to make sure it was within scope of
Gotcha.
the contract. So it
Okay.
was really more of a contracting role. And then
Okay.
I was the technical representative to the contracting officer. So I would advise the contracting officer, this is a little out of scope, or we could argue it's in scope because of this. And then the contracting officer would negotiate with Raytheon. Yeah.
That makes sense. Because the NBL is the Neutral Buoyancy Lab.
Yep.
That is, I don't know all of the details, but it's a gigantic swimming pool. Like, it's like the size of a football field, and then it's like 10 stories deep.
40
stories?
40 feet.
Oh, 40 feet deep.
40
Okay.
feet. So
And
4 stories. And you could fit the entire space shuttle
right.
in it, submerged. We didn't have the whole shuttle in there. We just had the part of it. But
Right.
we have the International Space Station mocked up underwater.
Which is I think what a cool idea. I mean, obviously it's the best way to try and figure out how to mimic
To
zero
train,
gravity.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the best we can do. You still have gravity when you're underwater,
Right.
but that's why they call it neutral buoyancy. So they put weights on the astronauts based on what depth they're in order to make them neutrally buoyant. So if they're down, say, at 20 feet, they don't float up and they don't sink down. They're neutrally buoyant based
Right.
on weight that they put on.
Yeah, and ever since Jeff told me you were working there, I kept waiting for the invitation to go swimming, and then I never got that invitation, and then
Oh, that's your bone to pick.
yeah, I'm more than anything like maybe just like dip my toe in the pool or something, but like
I didn't know you wanted an invite, but you
yeah.
wouldn't have got it because I didn't even get to go swimming in it.
Well, then we should have just broke in one night at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we all just go for a swim, and just go from there.
And I'm sure our friends would visit us in jail.
Right. Absolutely. Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, how cool is it to go swimming?
Because I'm sure they got video cameras everywhere. No, they do.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, yeah, and yeah, what was the big controversy at NASA in the last 10 years of the guy trying to steal space, moon rocks and stuff,
And then sell them on eBay.
an idiot.
Oh,
I
okay.
have one question from a listener of the podcast, for you. And that question comes from a listener by the name of Greg Rye. He wanted to know what happens to an astronaut in space and they have their spacesuit if they're on a spacewalk. What happens if they break wind? Do they just have to suffer with it, or is there a ventilation system?
They give them anti-break wind pills.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Well, hopefully they don't eat a boatload of beans
Right.
the night before. There is ventilation.
Okay. Very well.
Can they smell it?
Yeah. Do you smell things in space?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a
you're
vacuum.
Okay, well, first of all, you're not out in the vacuum without something around you because
Right.
you would explode.
But I mean, like when you see the astronauts like spinning around and doing all the fun stuff on the videos, and like they put like water, right? There's like
Yeah.
there's a little bubble. Would
Right.
would the same thing happen with gas, like smells and things?
Probably. Yeah, because inside they're in a 14.7 psi atmospheric pressure cabin. That's what you and I are in right now.
Okay.
We are in 14.7 psi, also known as 1 atmosphere. So the only thing that's different when you're in space is gravity isn't pulling you down. So you still have farts smell, BO smells, nasty burps
that's
smell.
gross. I bet that's gross.
Yeah, so you got all that, and then when they're doing their spacewalk, they're in a space suit.
Yeah.
Now, the space suit, think of it as a little spacecraft.
Right.
It's just in the shape of a body. The pressure's a lot lower. So when you go in your spacesuit, that pressure is down, I think, around 3.5 psi. So the body can do okay down that low, and you don't have as much open volume for circulation. So there's not a lot of empty volume.
Okay.
But there's still air in there.
Right.
You might have heard, it's been was back in like 2012. They had some problems with the water leaking inside the spacesuit.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, if you, I'm sure if you go either wherever you get your news, and
Right.
if you go to nasa.gov and burrow into water in the helmet,
Oh,
there was a really severe case where the guy was out spacewalking, and I forget, the water was leak. So they use water in a garment with little capillary tubes to cool their body, so they have a water cooled garment on.
yeah.
And I think he had a little leak in he had a leak somewhere in water exchanger or something, and water was leaking back here, and then since there's no gravity, it started to puddle
Oh my
up
gosh.
here, and he could have drowned.
Wow.
Because it was very serious. He didn't
Right.
drown. He
Right.
didn't.
But how ironic to drown in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. So
That would,
um, I know that there's not a lot of open volume
right.
in within the suit.
Wow. Well, f- thank you so much. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing some really just some really cool stories and your experiences. I wrote down a whole like host of like accomplishments that you've had. You were a part of the first big wave of women in STEM.
Yeah.
And when the push was to start to start exploring everybody's ideas and let everybody come in
Right.
and participate in solving these problems, and you were a part of that very first wave.
Yeah.
And before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to speak on what it would take now and what you've seen over your career about having women in STEM and why it's important for for young ladies to get their
Yeah.
sink their teeth into science.
Okay, well, I got a couple thoughts on that, and one thing I wanted to share back when I was explaining that horrible tragedy that happened, that kind of spearheaded me to look beyond my reach,
Yeah.
and oh, I must have a purpose. Got to find my purpose. Well, now that I'm 70 years old,
Congratulations.
thank you. And I got to do so many incredibly awesome, cool stuff at NASA.
Yeah.
I now realize that there isn't just one purpose to my life or to anyone's life. As a matter of fact, I might conclude that the purpose of my life was to raise my 3 kids
Who are
and
incredible.
help them become successful in their own rights. I mean, that clearly was a purpose.
Yeah.
But I truly believe the purpose of life is a life of purpose.
Okay.
Another way of saying it is do things purposefully, have a goal, and set forth a strategy to do it. And listen to your voice, listen to yourself, and be purposeful in what you do.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting girls and ladies into STEM. There's probably every reason under the sun. Just like, why would we not? why, why do we have to have a reason? But why would we not? Here's my thing. I have been so fortunate to have challenges in my career that were difficult, but the more I stuck to it and the harder I worked, I was able to overcome the challenge or achieve the goal. And I can't imagine any better feeling
Yeah.
than knowing that you've achieved something that you couldn't reach it at first. And it took 4 years or 6 years or 10 years to be able to achieve it, but you did it. And
Yeah.
I want women to feel that exhilaration.
You know what's amazing is that you started off aiming to be an astronaut, and obviously you didn't get to go to space. You didn't get to fly in a rocket. You didn't get to go in a shuttle, but you still played a role in people that did go and do that. You did play a role in our nation's exploration. You played a role in humanity's exploration of
Yeah.
space. And I think that is extremely admirable. And I think it's awesome that even though you didn't hit your initial goal, you still found a lot of satisfaction in
Oh,
solving the
absolutely.
problems that you solved.
It's the whole thing about it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Right.
But let me tell you a little anecdote.
Please.
When I was 46, I had worked with John Glenn because I was the flight manager of his return to
Mm,
space
yeah.
mission that he flew on the shuttle. And I got inspired by that guy. He was 77 years old when
Right.
I was 46.
Yeah.
I convinced myself I needed to apply again to
Really.
be an astronaut. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try again.
Sure.
So I applied and I got called in for an interview in the first group of 20 that were selected.
Wow. So
And
you
the interview is a week-long excursion of interviews and physicals, no holes barred physicals
all right.
that they say rival anything you'd see in the military.
Yeah.
And then we go out and drink beer together in the evening and socialize and get to know our group of 20.
What an exciting week.
So what I learned that week is that I was medically disqualified
Oh no.
because of a vision problem,
Eat a dinkum.
depth perception.
Really?
So I was born cross-eyed. My um my eyeballs pointed in at my nose.
Yeah.
And when I was 3, they did the surgery to straighten the eyes out. But it's a course correction surgery. It's not a fine tune. And all my life, I have struggled with perception,
Okay.
which I asked the doctor, I said, well, how could I play sports? He said,
Yeah.
your brain compensates. But when it comes to just the raw depth perception and the way they measure it in the lab, I couldn't pass the
Yeah, but
test.
I feel like if you're out in outer space, you see the Earth coming. You see the
Yeah.
Earth and
Uh,
on your way back in.
which switch did you want me to grab? Because I see 2 switches there. No.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
I'm sure.
so the way I look at it, Dave, is that was God's doing because
Sure.
God gave me these eyes. I don't think he never intended for me to
Yeah.
be an astronaut, but I didn't know that until I was 46. And then I'd had this awesome career and
Yeah.
continued on doing fun stuff. But you're right. Just because you don't achieve that one big goal, you still have had this journey. And it's that journey that is what makes you you.
Right.
If I had flown in space, that wouldn't have made me me.
Right.
Um, some people say you would have been bored to tears, Michelle, because you just got to go throw a switch here and there, and
Right.
on Earth, I got to run things. I got to lead the teams and solve the problems. It's the people in mission control that have to solve the problems that the astronauts are experiencing for the
Right.
most part. Now,
Right.
Apollo 13, the crew up there, they had to do a lot of their own troubleshooting. But on shuttle, we had the whole ground crew 24/7 available to troubleshoot and solve problems.
I just kept thinking, like, when you're, when the solar panels wouldn't open up, and you just like going through this just stressful moment at your job. Yeah, I could just imagine, like, you get home, you walk in the door, and like Jeff is staring at you like, "Where's my chicken nuggets, Mom?"
Yeah,
Like,
I got a poopy diaper.
right, exactly. Do you not understand? I just put a satellite in outer space. You figure out your own diaper.
That's exactly the way. Well, okay, Jeff was out of diapers by that time.
Sure,
but
sure.
you hit the nail on the head. And
The
so
juxtaposition just had to be so
yeah, you
interesting.
go from maximum mental intensity, stress out city, and you come home to maximum emotional,
Yeah.
social stress out city.
Right, right.
And it's something that every married couple that shares that venue, they have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And it's a partnership. And
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, yeah, every parent faces their own set of issues, and parenting is not unique. Every parent knows the stress of
right.
trying to raise a 3.5-year-old, or
Oh,
trying to get your 7-year-old to finally tie his shoes, or whatever it might be.
yep.
It's just kind of interesting thinking about, like, just like, on your way, just just
Oh,
just how that mental switch of
yeah.
going from one world to
Yeah.
that world. I mean, and just thinking about, like, what Jeff is going through now. I mean, as an anesthesiologist, I'm sure there's got to be stressful days where he's got to,
right.
pull it together and focus,
Right.
and get his mind right. And then, on the way home, he,
Yeah.
forgot formula, son of a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I know. I know
yeah.
he told me, we don't talk that much anymore, but in the early years, he'd talk about how, he would say, I almost lost somebody, but, something about, usually it's bringing them back to being awake after they've been down. And, yeah, it's,
Yeah, he has lives on the line.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's really it. That's so interesting. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions. Thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. And more than anything, I hope my students get an opportunity to see your experiences. And I've known you 30 something years at this point,
Yeah.
and I had no idea. I had no clue just what kind of wealth of experience that you've had, and so I really appreciate it. And
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna be in a podcast. The BBC is,
really,
yeah, they have, I think it's called 13 Minutes to the Moon. And I think they've done 2 seasons already, and they're recording a 3rd season. I call it a season now. They just they did a recording with me a month or so ago, and I think it's supposed to air in November.
oh
But
wow,
it's the BBC,
yeah,
and I think it's 13 Minutes to the Moon, something like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, you like this is your accolades are really interesting, and
But you know what, Dave?
I will be listening to that podcast too.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I'm just mom. I'm
Right.
just
Yeah.
mom to my kids.
You're Jeff's mom. You're Jeff's mom.
Yeah, we go pull trees down. Remember that time we
Yes.
had to pull that tree down?
I love the picture with this gigantic chainsaw,
Yeah,
me, Jeff, and Sean. Yeah.
yeah.
That was
Oh
cool.
yeah. Yep.
Yep.
So
You just
well, cool.
yeah, thank you so
We'll keep
much.
in touch.
Of course, absolutely I will. I
Yeah.
absolutely will. Thank you so much. And if I have any young kids that are interested and need just
Yeah.
need some information or whatever,
Yeah.
I hope you're okay if I send them your way.
Yep. Send them my email.
Yeah.
And there was another panel I was on earlier this year. It was Columbia 25 years after. Um, I asked a friend of mine in Houston where we can find that video, and she said it was on a certain. So I'm going to try and find that and send it to you.
Yes, please.
That was another panel discussion, and there were some astronauts that were on it as well. I don't think there were any lady astronauts there, but one of my students was there. Yeah, like I really taught them anything is more than me. Yeah, but I'll
Well,
find that link and I'll send that to you. And you
thank
got
you.
my email, you got my phone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're awesome. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and we'll talk to you soon.
absolutely. You take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye, Jeff's mom.
Bye, Jeff's friend.